This all happened just before my license was due to be suspended. I was getting as much driving in as possible in the next 3 weeks before I couldn't drive for the next 9 months. This also included letting my ex-partner drive my car as well. He was on his learners, I had my full license, and I was teaching him to drive and filling out his logbook. Yes, he was now my ex, but we were both still pretty close. It was at night time, and we were driving along a main road in town, when all of a sudden we ran over something on the road. What the hell was that? I don't know, but I couldn't avoid it. I quickly looked in the rear vision mirror, and it looked like a big concrete slab. The steering is all weird now. Great. Now my car's got something wrong with it. I could hear a scraping sound coming from underneath the car as well. Dude, whatever you just ran over has done some damage. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. Maybe you should have slowed down and went around whatever that was on the road. There was no time to slow down. I seen it at the last second. I was really annoyed now. I told him to drive back to his place because I wanted to drop him off and go home. He told me he would drive to our mate's house instead. We stopped there and said I would see him later. He was worried that I was angry with him. I wasn't angry, I was more concerned about my car. I told him not to stress about it, and then I drove home. He wasn't wrong, the steering was all messed up. The next morning, my dad had my car up on the ramp and gave it a look underneath. Apparently, the engine shield guard was half torn off, the axles were all bent, not to mention the exhaust had been scraped to almost tearing a hole in the manifold. At the time, it was going to cost a bit to fix, money I didn't have at the time. I felt upset now. I didn't want to drive the car the way it was, but I had no choice until I got it fixed. That night, I was over at my mate's house, and my ex was there as well. We were talking about my car and what was wrong with it. I was just joking with this statement, but what if I was just to say goodbye to the car by setting it alight and claiming insurance on it? My mate piped up and said he'd seriously do it. I was shocked and said I was joking, but he said if I did it, I could get another car and have extra money to play with. I wasn't 100% sure if that's how it worked, but okay. The catch was, he wanted a certain amount of money for doing the deed. I really wasn't sure if I wanted to go through with it, but he told me to think about it. I went home and gave it some thought. I slept on it too. The more I thought about it though, the more I wanted to go through with it. What the hell was I thinking though? What if it all didn't work out? What if we got caught out? I had to keep weighing up my options. 2 days later, I went back to my mate's house and we spoke more about what we had spoken about previously. I told him we needed a plan, we needed another driver, a story for everyone to stick to, and only the people there are to know about it. Then finally, the location of where the car was going to go to. My mate said he had a trustworthy friend who had her license that could drive us out of there. Now who was going to be there? My mate said us two, my ex due to him knowing the plans, and the driver. I liked that plan. Now, where were we going to do the deed? My mate suggested we do it in the forestry just up the highway from home. I was happy with that too. Now we needed to plan when, and then it was all systems go. The next night we all met up down by the river just down the road from my house, as we didn't want to be seen anywhere in town. We went through the plan and then we drove out to the highway and then 15 minutes up the highway into the forestry. We stopped along a dirt road that was secluded. My mate said this was a good spot, and he had everything he needed to do for the deed. A part of me didn't want to go through with it though, so I spoke up. Hold on, are you sure this is a good idea? Is this plan actually going to work? Of course it will, bro. Just stick to the story and we'll all be okay. I didn't feel confident anymore. I felt this was going to be a big mistake. I felt something was missing. It was too late at this point, as he already poured petrol all over the car. My mate's friend sat in her car in silence, with me and my ex-partner, as we watched my mate set the car alight. He ran over to the car and snatched the keys to the car out of my hand, and he throws them into the blazing car. Dude, what did you do that for? I needed them for evidence. Mate, the car wasn't hot-wired. The keys had to go with the car. That's the part of the plan that was missing, but my mate told me it wasn't necessary. We all left the scene and returned back to where we all met up before. We all sat in my mate's friend's car in silence, reflecting on what had just happened and what we had just done. I was really starting to regret what we had just done now, but it was too late to go back on it now. We all agreed to stick to the story. Now, the second phase of this plan was for my mate's friend to drop us off at my mate's house. My mate's friend wanted to go home anyway, as she didn't want any more part in what was going on. This kind of made me feel a bit nervous, because what if she cracked under pressure and turned us all in? When we got back to my mate's house, I called the police and told them someone had taken my car, because I accidentally left the keys in the ignition due to being distracted. The police asked me where the car was taken from. I told them out the front of my mate's house. I gave them the location, and then they took down my statement on the phone and told me that they would keep an eye out for it and they would keep in touch. I then rang my insurance company and put in the claim. My mate's mum gave me a lift home that night, and I told my parents what had happened. They were mind blown. I was so emotional, not just because of what happened, but because I felt a huge sense of guilt and regret. But my parents didn't know this yet, or did they? The next day, the police had rang the house phone and told my dad that they had located the car in the forestry up the highway, burnt out. My dad seemed really skeptical of things now. He knew something wasn't right, and this started to make me nervous. I started getting really paranoid that this whole thing was going to crumble. Now, because I didn't have a car, my dad let me drive his red Ford Laser, just up until my license was due to be suspended, which was happening very soon, so at least I was still mobile for a week or two. The whole situation then sat well in my mind now, and I just hoped this claim would go through smoothly. But in the back of my mind, for some reason, I knew something wasn't right. That's where one day my intuition had come to light. I was at work, and my ex-partner burst into the store with two of his mates, telling me that he and my mate had just been questioned by the police. My blood ran cold. How did they know my ex had anything to do with it? My boss asked me what was going on, but I asked her if I could take my tea break and I'd go find out. And I met my ex-partner outside. Dude, what the hell? Why did the police question you both? I'm not sure, but they said they've spoken to Martha, and they'll be seeing you next. Oh crap. Did you stick to the story? Yeah, I did. But I think Martha has said something she shouldn't have. We can't get a hold of her, and she's nowhere to be found. I was really starting to feel sick in the guts now, as I knew something was going to somehow slip. Or had it already slipped? I went back into work, and my boss told me I looked like I had just seen a ghost. I told her I wanted to go sit down out the back and have a chat with her. Anxiety was taking over me like a virus. I didn't know what to do from here. We went out the back, we sat down, and I had told her the whole situation, and she was shocked. She told me I needed to do the right thing and go to the police and tell the truth. It would make me look better as a person, considering they were going to question me anyway. My boss rang my parents and told them they needed to come down to the store to join the meeting. They came in looking confused from not knowing what was going on, and then my boss informed them of the whole ordeal. My mum was so angry and so disappointed with me, but my dad knew the whole time. He just needed confirmation, and this was it. From there, I left work early, and my parents and I went down to the police station, where I confessed to what I had done. I was then officially put in custody and was questioned about everything. Apparently, a source had come in and informed them of the crime committed. They wouldn't say who, but the insurance company were also questioning whether the claim was fraudulent or not, due to the keys being in the car when it was burnt out. This confirmation had confirmed it. 2 weeks later, I had to go to court, and I hired a lawyer to speak on my behalf due to my anxiety skyrocketing because I thought I was going to go to jail. But the judge said it wasn't necessary, as the case was going to be adjourned anyway, due to my mate and my ex-partner still denying their part in the crime. I did feel safe, however, because no one was allowed to speak to each other while the investigation and court case were going on. The judge urged me that day that I could just represent myself at the next court appearance, which turned out to be the hearing. A month later, I had returned to court, with my parents both by my side. I seen my mate over by the stairs, out the front of the courthouse, with his parents. They were all giving me death stares. My heart was beating up into my throat now. I thought I was going to vomit. But because they couldn't speak to me, they then walked away. And then we walked inside. We waited around out in the foyer until we were told to go in. It was my turn to take the stand, and the judge spoke about the crime. I agreed with the statement by saying, "Yes, Your Honour." I stood tall, spoke clear, but yet looked vulnerable. The judge could see this. Because it was my first offence, I had good character references, I had a permanent job, and because I didn't obtain any money from the insurance claim, I was only served with a 100-hour community service order. I felt so lucky. I was happy I didn't go to jail. After we left the courtroom, I didn't know what my mate's fate was going to be, but I'm sure I would find out eventually. For the next 3 months, I stayed on the down low, concentrating on working and doing my community service order. Although I didn't have my license at this point now, so my dad and my brother were there to drive me to where I needed to go. I really did appreciate my family with their support during this hellsome time.